As federal investigators and two congressional committees probe Russia's meddling into the 2016 U.S. election, as well as allegations that President Donald Trump's staffers colluded with the Russian government, at least 6 current or former associates of Mr. Trump have been shown to have had ties to Russia. Here's the list of who's who. The president's son-in-law and his senior advisor Jared Kushner.
Can you tell us how the transition is going?
During the transition, he met with Sergei Gorkov, the head of a Russian state-controlled bank that finances political projects. The U.S. slapped sanctions on the bank in 2014, following Russia's annexation of Crimea. Mr. Kushner also met with Russia's ambassador to the U.S., Sergei Kislyak. Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Mr. Sessions met with Mr. Kislyak twice last year while advising the Trump campaign, despite telling the Senate Judiciary Committee during his confirmation hearing that he did not meet any Russian officials.
I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians, and I'm unable to comment on it.
Mr. Sessions subsequently recused himself from involvement in any investigation related to the presidential race. Mr. Trump's former national security advisor, Mike Flynn. Mr. Flynn spoke on the phone with Mr. Kislyak in December about the potential lifting of U.S. sanctions on Russia. He told now Vice President Mike Pence that they hadn't talked about sanctions.
I talked to General Flynn yesterday, and the conversations that took place at that time were not in any way related to new U.S. sanctions against Russia or the expulsion of diplomats.
Mr. Flynn admitted he misled Mr. Pence after transcripts of his phone calls with Mr. Kislyak came to light, and subsequently resigned. In addition, shortly before joining Mr. Trump's campaign, Mr. Flynn was paid tens of thousands of dollars by a Russian air freight company, a Russian cybersecurity company, and the Kremlin-backed news organization RT. Former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort. Prior to working with Mr. Trump, Mr. Manafort worked on the political campaign of former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych, who backed close ties to Russia. It was recently revealed that in 2006, Mr. Manafort signed a $10 million annual contract with a Russian oligarch with close ties to the Kremlin. A memo indicated he could influence politics, business dealings, and news coverage in the United States, Europe, and former Soviet republics to benefit the Putin government. Mr. Manafort has denied working for the Russian government. Former Trump campaign foreign policy advisor Carter Page. Mr. Page has been the subject of an FBI counterintelligence investigation over his contacts with Russian officials and public statements. Speaking in Moscow in December, he dismissed claims that Russia tried to influence the U.S. election through hacking.
I think that's very much overestimated, and personally, I think until there's serious evidence, it's very similar to what I've personally been through. A lot of speculation, but nothing there. So.
He said he would meet with the House Intelligence Committee to, quote, finally set the record straight and counter false evidence and lies about his dealings with Russia. Longtime Republican operative and Trump advisor Roger Stone. In August, Mr. Stone wrote on Twitter that it would soon be Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta's time in the barrel. Shortly after, a cache of emails stolen from Mr. Podesta's account were released to the public, an act U.S. intelligence officials say was perpetrated by Russian hackers. Mr. Stone has also acknowledged having contact with Guccifer 2.0, the online persona intelligence officials say is a front used by the Russian government to post documents stolen from the Democrats. Democrats say all of this indicates that Mr. Stone knew the emails were coming. Mr. Stone says the tweet was referring to an article he was soon to post about Mr. Podesta, and that his contact with Guccifer was innocuous. He said he has had no contacts or collusions with the Russians.